first impressions. I want to just thank you all again very much. You might be listening to this separate from the other thing, so um, welcome back if you're coming back. Everyone's here. We have Forever GM, Daron, we have Kevin, Gray, Great Panda, Pandemonium, and Zack, who's oh man, your handle, I forgot it. Why did I forget
Not quite proficient.
Not quite proficient. And this was a fun game. Regardless, it was just a really good time, and I had a good time playing with everybody. It was really good. Um, Tested out a whole lot of mechanics. Right, we looked at a whole lot of different things, like the fact that her channel divinity that you gave her is not a spell, which was huge. But I want to start by just getting some first impressions from the author as we have completed the adventure. How did you feel about the adventure using the material that you've made?
Um, hmm. Uh, I mean, obviously, you know, I had fun. Let's see. Talking about, I guess with the adventure design and whatnot. I like that, you know, you did incorporate some of the, I'm trying to think, like, where to start. Okay. So, you definitely have, like, a super kind of deep lore, right, for the world and, like an actual, like, an actual story for the module instead of just go kill the goblin, right?
Yeah.
Which, you know, which, I mean, that's almost like what I expect with, like, one-shots is, like, it's very...
Go kill the goblins.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, super simple. There's not, like, a deep-running conspiracy lore or anything really like that, so... I mean, it's definitely different in that regard, right, where it's much heavier on kind of your background elements and that sort of thing, and, I mean, like, it helps when you are doing, like, the role play of your character, especially, like, at the end when you're, you know, necessarily, like, you know, possibly bargaining with, like, the villain or deciding whether to kill the kobold or whatever. Let's see. So the design, there was the, like, Sturge cave, there was, like, the needle traps.
Mm-hmm.
So you did have, like, some of the traps that you'd have in, like, you know, kind of your traditional dungeon crawling. Let's see. So you had a kobold fight, right? And then you had, so it was like 2 combats. The kobolds were like very like physical focus art, right? Kobolds and worms, and then the caster at the end, obviously, it did a good job of testing all the stuff, right? Like getting a nice broad spread of kind of everything. You know, Kevin was playing like the Monster Hunter specifically for monstrosities. If you know, of course, if like someone is using your module and they have a player with a Monster Hunter, they should take steps to replace certain monsters so that a Monster Hunter's ability can come in at some point, right? So it's like he was a monstrosity, so he could, you know, slice and dice the worms like pretty easily, right? And that's kind of what the niche of the Monster Hunter is you have like one specialty and you're like super duper focused, right, on it. So of course, if you're like a Monster Hunter of like giants and there's no giants, it's like, well, I have Hunter's Mark and Smite, I guess, but that's pretty much all I get for my my prestige class.
Well, the thing is, they technically are aberrations. I just made them monstrosities, so that you can try all the physical stuff.
I was gonna say I would have just been like, yeah, these are that for this. Yeah.
I would if they were devils or demons, I would just made them demonic. If it was like, you know, because if you play a ranger of pretty much any kind, I do the same thing. Like, because you want to make sure that what you're good at, you actually, you know, get to use.
And I'm sure that they'll get after me if they ever watch this, but I had a number of players in my introduction to my recent campaign by Black and Blood. They were like, "Oh man, I had my psychic ability that happened to work out well, and Boone's radiance and his hearth managed to push away the darkness of this other creature, and it's like we were the perfect team built for this." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." Anyways,
almost as if the encounter was made with that in mind. That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like overall, I mean, I think it was definitely like I there's no glaring flaws that I see with it, right? It did take us a while to get through it, but I think that was more maybe that was more like the player, right? I guess.
I think actually I'd probably redo how their blood ability, like the kobolds and their like blood sac abilities. I think I would redo that because and it always happens when you assume. I just assumed you all would have some AOE spells. I just thought somebody was gonna come in and just like boom and like half the encounter would be done in like 2 seconds, and I wanted to really give the marshals a chance to shine, so I didn't want it to be like just empty. But because of that, like y'all just
I think in general
killed them one by one methodically.
What was kind of funny is that you had told me that when we were fighting them, right? Because you had told me that you were using stuff from like the books, specifically like the monster tables of like how to give your monsters extra abilities and that sort of thing. I didn't recognize that the kobolds were using like the swallow ability, right? Like the nets, and I was like, well, nets that are like doing acid damage. I'm like, okay, that's new. I've never like heard that, but I'm like, okay, whatever, that's fine. Yeah, I didn't really like connect the dots that is what you were using, right?
Yeah, it's exactly word like DC everything I pulled from the book, and I liked that fact because you literally use kobolds using nets as an example of reskinning the ability, and I just thought that was such a good idea that I'm like, yeah. And I'm glad though that it didn't feel like they were using the swallow ability, right? Like because it makes it feel new, know. And I think that works. It worked really. If it fooled you, it fooled everybody. Right? Like that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like basically the entire point of that section is like. Once you've played, the 5e is like 10 years old now. It's like once you've played for a bit, it's like especially low level play, right? Because nobody ever plays 13th level. It's like there's only so many low CR monsters, and you basically get to learn the ones that are actually dangerous and the ones that have special abilities. Like you learn what they are, right? You learn undead fortitude. You learn like ghoul stench. You learn lycanthropy, immunities, whatever, trolls. The orc, right, stuff of like, not dropping to 0. So it's like, that entire section is for like, okay, well, we're gonna do zombies that have an ice breath, like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the whole point. It's like, okay, and so it's like, okay, there's 5 zombies in the room, and your player's like, oh god, okay, here we go, and then they hit you with the lightnings. Whatever, right?
Lightning. What?
Like, wait, what? Right. And that's the entire point of that section.
Yeah. I think it explained it really well. It also gave me the idea to give the kobolds the relentless endurance because of the situation they were in, right?
Yep.
Like, they're in this kind of blood place. Let me apply that to them and see how it works. So, and I think that is inspiring, and it helps you think about it for making your own kind of adaptations and stuff.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point of it. The original idea, like first pass at that, was it's a goblin dungeon, but they're all worship a red dragon. Instead of coming up with a goblin boss stat block, let's slap dragon breath on one of the lead goblin. And there you go. You have a boss without ever having to do any work.
Yeah.
That's good. I kind of want to just go around and talk about. Let's just start with what was your favorite part. What part stood out to you is really, really fun. Let's do that, and then I want to hear one criticism. Not criticism. We'll do this instead. Something that you want to see more of. That's probably the best way to word that. If you notice something or saw something you're like, I want more of that, or I wanted more of that, or that felt like I wanted to do that more. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we'll do it that way instead of just criticism, because I don't think criticisms are always useful, but knowing what you want to build up more in your games, I think, is, especially if other people, because if you're listening to this right now or you're watching it, you're past the point of, oh, I enjoyed a cool game that these people played. You're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. So as a DM, as a player, whatever it is. So we want to provide some of that for you to see what you could desire more from your games and from you as a player as well. Not just putting it on the DM, but also you, what you want to see more of. So if you see something that your other players could have done more of that you think, hey, not like oh, you should have healed more, but like but like
I didn't heal once.
You didn't heal one, not
I
a
had
single
the
time.
spell. I just never used it.
But like how you played that character was interesting. How you used the tactic here, I liked, and I'm gonna put that into this. You see what I mean? Like something like that that you want to see more of in D&D in general. Okay. Let's start with me. I'm gonna do my favorite and then something I would want to see more of, and I'll do myself as an example. My favorite scene. Let me think. I think the tension at the end with the gun in the mouth. No, I take that back. My favorite scene is going to be when Velka punched through the shield spell. Like, I feel like that's my favorite scene. I feel like that was the most badass scene. Like, because she just broke through, and it's like the epitome of what an anti-mage is supposed to be. Yeah. And just, like, punched through the shield spell, grabbed her by the throat, and slammed her, and cut off so many spells that she could have used to protect herself. And that, like, it felt so great to me.
And I will mention that the chokeslam is from the luchador. It has nothing to do with the anti-mage. It just meshes well, right? Like it, so it's like you can just be like a regular luchador and you do get that ability, right? Because I mean, so yeah,
it's good
because it's very specific, right? Mm-hmm. It's like only verbal components. Like it's completely useless against anything that's not a caster, and then even then they can use other stuff. Like, so it's very,
niche. But when it came out, it's such a good. Like, I love finding niche things that find their niche and are used. Right, it's one of my favorite things, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's the thing that I think I want more of. Is I don't like how every wizard takes fireball. Right? Yeah. Or how, like, that idea of you have to have the most optimized spell list with the quote-unquote best spells in order to play D&D. Like, I think that's complete hogwash. And you have, like, the characters that you all built felt like they had their own stories, their own lives, and their mechanics empowered the character. Right? And the character is not a slave to the mechanics, right? Like, they're not, oh, I have to be a wizard like this because that's the best spell. So I have to give away all the flavor of who my character is. Because if you have a good DM, or even if you don't, like, you will find situations that match who your character is because you decided to be that character and you are looking for them. Right? You're looking for situations to use your choke slams, to use your subtle spells, to use your poisonous handshakes, right? Because they're part of who your character is, and you want. And I really just don't like when everyone just tries to find the best build, and instead you find what makes the best character overall for you, and that's roleplay as well as mechanics. I think both of them can tell an important story.
Because the dice will tell you what's going to happen at the end of the night.
Dice still dice. Dice are still dice. And when your opponent rolls a nat 20, would you prefer they rolled it against a spell you felt like you had to take, or your specific niche thing that now you like, you got me? Right? Like, it feels different, because if it's one and you just felt like you had to take it, now you're sad twice. because the dice were against you, and you felt like you just had to do it. But at least you were your cool character when the shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's actually save Forever GM from last on this one, and let's go to Zack.
Sure. So I really liked that throughout the running of this session, you had a lot of information built into the environment that was very relevant. Right from the inscriptions in the wall, and you described it to us as we were reaching the end, but I already understood because we were paying attention. Like at the very end, there was various points throughout where you had me pulling up the pieces of information you had given us, right? But at the very end, you had described, you had said, you wanted to make it clear to us, obviously, that if it got to her, this would not be the last we would see of her. And I'm like, yeah, obviously, we know that. We saw the perfect digestion. We saw the recreation of what was. Yeah.
I didn't pick up on that.
Okay, well, some of us were paying attention.
But I think that's part of it too. Like, you know, the storytelling that he was telling you about, he was saying earlier. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, it's that set of stuff. I really like that. And I'll build off of that into what I'd like to see more of is, as we were running through, we were picking up a lot on what you had, but I caught myself on this as well. I wasn't, until very near the end of the session, I wasn't pulling much on what the other players were laying down, right? Little bits they were putting out there, because we were as well. And to be fair to the other players, I was invisible for half of the first session.
I mean, yeah.
I can't blame them for that. But myself as well, just pulling off on that. Just, like, take note of the information going on in the environment and in the actions that the other players are performing, and you'll get those cool moments you want to pull on. You'll get those moments of connection and those aha, because all the information's there. I think that's my favorite thing, and that's what I'd like to see more of.
I've found that whenever I run D&D with a new group, the first session is everyone getting used to me as a DM. The second session is when you all are getting used to each other. Okay? And then usually the third session is when all of us are getting used to the world and we all have bought into it. And then it goes from there. And I could feel some good session 2 energy here as people started to understand what other people's strengths were, what kind of abilities were going on between each other, and the motivations, right? It was very cool to me when Zone looked at Blackwire and Crowe and didn't look at anybody else and said, do I kill this woman? Right? Because they clearly had a connection and a motivation. And that's why I stopped and like zeroed in on it, because Zone caught that. And that's an important question to ask before he acted. And I thought that was great. That's a fantastic.
It was a great little moment.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I would love to see more of that. Let's go to... I actually want to go to Kevin.
So, the kind of tense moment that we talked about there. But there was a lot of cool moments back to back. I don't really consider that one moment that happened. Because whenever she was on the ground, in my view, our man Zone here would have killed her if you did not intervene. Like, he was ready. He's like, okay, she's about to die. I used my lightning. But you interjected. You stopped and said, slow down time. This is what your character thinks. This is what your character thinks. How do you feel about this? And you created a moment that would not have existed if you would have just been hands-off DM. What do you do, players?
I like doing that. When Zone asked, that's what I wanted to pull back, right? Like, if Zone was just like, die, blow the lady's head off, then we just moved on and it'd been fine. But because he asked, like, and that's the thing, like, I agree 100% with what Zack is saying. Like, when the players stop and, like, be in the moment and they make a decision, like, I like to honor that, right? I will honor it by slowing down time and being in that moment with everyone. I think, yeah. But again, if Zone had not, I'd just let her blow her head off and we'd been done.
As far as what I would like to see more of in D&D, I feel like with a lot of encounter design, it feels like it's impossible to kill players because combat is designed around your 4 encounters. So I don't know if this was actually true or if you're just doing the DM thing, but I like the notion that there was something going on in this room that if we did not counterplay it, this would have been a total party kill.
Oh, yeah.
Because whenever I picked up the gem, you were like, well, this is winnable now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and doubly whenever I got healed and you stopped from her draining somebody, it's like there were key moments in the fight that could have told a different story if the player. It's heightened player agency, I guess you might call it, in these key moments that change things.
Yeah, y'all could have died terribly. The second room has a ton of. The other doors had like 4 other worms behind them. But because you all like blocked them north, the other kobolds couldn't go down to open the other doors, which would have complicated things a lot for you. I just spaced and didn't think about the fact that reverse gravity would put you on the ceiling next to the gym. I gave everyone a perception check when you walked in to notice it, but nobody did.
That was our round of less than 10s.
Yeah.
And then I failed the check to pick it up, and I had to use a resource to make it happen.
Right.
You did. Because if you did not, like, that was the first thing. I blast people up to the ceiling, and then I light the gym, and then it kills everyone. Right? Like, it does a ton of damage. But that didn't happen. Like, you all, through your own ways, found ways around it to keep it from going very bad very quickly. I thought I was going to get Dominate Person off.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool whenever we had our anti-mage pull the spider back onto the winning team.
Yeah.
That felt like one of those moments where it's a counterplay against the DM that he didn't see coming.
Because he had, like, he had healing spells.
Mm-hmm.
And healing spells to a blood wizard is resources. That's why Timor wasn't killed, right? Timor was kept alive because he was a good healer. I was going to have him land and cast like a 2nd or 3rd level Cure Wounds on the evil mage.
She can turn that right into spells or damage.
And she would just burst it out on everybody. But she pulled the magic right on out the spider. And everybody was rolling poorly to see if he was dominated too. And so you didn't even know if he was actually dominated or betrayed you.
Yep.
And you're like, it seems like it's done. I'm going to try it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought that it was worth the risk, right, of being like, this might waste my action, but, we're going to do it anyway. And then, of course, since it's a Dispel Magic, it's like a, spellcasting modifier roll anyway, so it's like I could have failed that, and then, but yeah, no, I mean, like, we had, like, some key rolls that really, like, determines how the fight went. Yep.
Definitely. Let's go to Blackwire next.
I think my favorite part, and we pretty much just discussed this, but I think it was in that second battle when the reverse gravity spell went off, and so we were all kind of separated as far as who was on the ceiling and who was on the floor, and then the creativity of those who passed that spell save, how they were able to stay on the ground. I thought that was really neat. And then just the complications that come from it. So all of our like AoEs, they're kind of distorted now because something's on the ceiling, something's on the ground. So that the whole dynamic of that fight, and some of the enemies, some of the bad guys are on the ceiling, some of them are able to stick to the ground, like that whole encounter. I thought was really fun. And we had a good blast with it. What I would like to see more of it, and you incorporated this in, because I was a little bummed that we, as a blood mage, so I wasn't going to be able to use the blood garnet because I wasn't at a high enough level. But even though I still didn't get to use it, you still had one in the story. So I thought that was a really cool idea to just have that item maybe not something that our character wouldn't do, like killing an innocent in order to get one. So if those items are just in the world already, um, then especially for us not having reached that level, I think I would like to. I know that's really specific to this kind of module, but um, having more blood garnish around specifically for the blood mage, especially when they don't want to do the requirements to gather one. I thought that was really neat. I'd like to definitely see more of that.
It's interesting offshoring the dirty work, right? Because I wanted to see if any of you would have used the spell scroll. Right?
I didn't trust that stuff a minute.
It didn't get dire, but also it never came up because no one tried to heal Zone. But Zone, you were horribly infected.
I know. I was wondering when it was going to pop off.
Yeah, it's called Healer's Bane. Anytime someone tries to cast a healing spell on you, they take damage for however much they try to heal.
That would have, if you had gone down, that's when I would have healed you, and I would have tried to heal you for like 50.
So you would have been down trying to put me up.
Dead. I would have been down. I would have been dead.
It's a horrible thing. Also in GM's Box Duct Tape, if you want to horribly curse your players.
Yeah.
And then all healing that's not a short rest or a long rest is only half healing.
What was on the ring?
Huh?
Yeah, there was a curse on the ring. I don't.
The ring.
Yeah.
It's cursed with. It doesn't usually come up, but the actual curse written down was that you only get half as much healing back from when you take a short rest. But it didn't come up. I thought you all were going to look at the cupboard before the short.
Because we didn't loot.
Yeah, y'all did loot, but it's fine. Y'all got loot at the order.
I had couples. What do they got?
I gotta push you on loot because I wanted to put the items in there.
There's no faster way to make me.
That was how we knew who was down below, and as we're going down the stairs, we have to stop that now.
Yeah. If y'all didn't know that, you all might not have rushed in and been more careful, and then she would have had another blood.
She would have had another one,
and that would have made the fight worse.
Always be suspect when the DM reminds you there's loot on the table.
Right.
Yeah, maybe check the wagon, check the cabinet and the wagon.
It's like there's a divot in the wall over there too. There's nothing in it, but it's there.
But just look, yeah. Let's do Ray next. Raymond, go ahead.
First, again, I know I keep saying this, but I really, really appreciated this. This was awesome. This was great. Every time I play with new people who DM, I learn a lot. Like just from each encounter and from listening and talking and stuff like that. As Pell knows, he's kind of like he's my idol when it comes to DM.
I've ruined your life many times.
He has. He really has.
It's been terrible. It's been a horrible time.
I'm
glad to have shared it with you.
But as far as like this campaign, well, I guess it's a combination of the two. One, as far as things I like to see in campaigns more, I would like to see happen more often, or mechanics that push for it a little bit. Not push, but prompt for it. Are the group cohesion. So, for example, like when we first got into the caves and I tried to disarm the trap randomly, the fact that everyone else was like, yo, here you go, dip, I'm going over here. You know what I mean? Like generating those situations. Not always the nitty gritty ones, which are awesome as always, but like the funny ones. The little
it wouldn't have worked if that trap went off. Everybody in the tunnel would have got hurt by those.
Oh
things.
yeah, it would have been horrible.
It'd have been terrible, but I'm glad. Like, yeah, it was funny.
But like generating those types of situations, throughout the entire thing. Us being able to riff off of abilities and things, like knowing what kind of, okay, this is what this person's. I think playing in character, I think, is what I'm getting at. Playing in the character of your character. I know you guys talked about kind of more so like not min-maxing and just kind of, doing it, but like, yeah, we didn't really do we voices. I love voices. I love voice acting, but like playing the character, keeping the character true to the character, stats and all. Like I was squishy. I should not, as the tiefling, I should not have an 8 for my strength. It should not be, but it is. So like playing to that and still being like, but I'm a big buff tiefling. Yeah, like
I like the playing as being in the moment as a character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like responding to things and responding to each other just as much as the environment in character, instead of just I want to get to the next encounter or the next fight, or the next story beat. Even some people are just, I want to see what happens in the next story beat instead of being in the moment. And I like that. Like I like when you said, like when you looked to both of them and asked, "Is this what I'm doing?" Like that was a moment in character, right? You were there looking at them and making that decision. And I definitely like honoring that style of play.
So
It's nice to see a functional group once in a while.
yeah.
Once in a while.
Again, they're all
Once in a while.
functional for me.
Well, aren't you just the lucky one?
As far as like the DM kit, I thought it was great. The module was great. I think the builds are really good. I wish I could have used the Chaos Caster a little bit more personally, because I kept forgetting the Chaos Caster they've got little things. Like I feel like that can go with any caster, period. Because it's just the little. It's more of a character creation piece, I think, than it is than the class itself. You know what I mean? Like it kind of lends to a more whimsical character build, I think.
Yeah.
So,
the chaos. The chaos caster. We talked about this last week, but it's very dice heavy, dice dependent. You're going to be rolling a whole lot of extra stuff, and it kind of slows the game down. But like you said, a lot of the things are kind of like passives, or they're like little things that aren't necessarily like up front and like center. They're easy to forget.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of the fact that the Tides of Chaos ability basically lets you just give yourself advantage on anything. And every time you like flip a coin, or roll a D4 or whatever, and if it hits odd or heads or whatever, you get a surge immediately, and you get the ability back. So that
was funny because I forgot that. I wish I'd remembered that on that roll one, because we'd ended it right there.
It'll be a very different game.
Right, so it's like what can happen if you keep rolling a certain way is like, okay, I give myself advantage on this. We have a wild surge. Okay, well I get the ability back immediately, so I'm going to attack again and give myself advantage and get another wild surge. Yeah, but like I think last session you were definitely using the burst potential of the gun mage a lot more, and this session it was more like I think you didn't have like full resources. You were having to be like more reserved, and that is kind of the idea behind that, right? Because like we didn't get a long rest, so it's like you can burst out all your spell slots real quick, but
if you have a long day.
You have a long day, exactly.
Or you get jumped in the middle of the night or something, you're done.
You're like, oh, hold on, let me.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So last, we'll go to you forever, GM.
So, you wanted like the favorite thing from the module, and then what do you want to see more of? So, I think players typically have a bias towards their own cool deeds or whatever. But I mean, I definitely think being like stuck to the ceiling with reverse gravity and just kind of like grabbing the spider's head and using the dispel magic. I mean, that was definitely like a pivot point in the fight, right? Because like you not only knock out an enemy instantly, but you gain an ally. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what I think what I had planned to do before the spider jumped on me was basically like jump out of the reverse gravity, land, and then use dispel magic on her, right? And that would, I think it was to knock out the reverse gravity or whatever. But
I think
what ended up happening?
You're gonna elbow drop her to try to break your concentration.
I think the only special move I didn't get to use was like the lariat, which is just you're just growing up and you're just hitting somebody and you're like knocking them down, and the ankle swing. I don't think I got to use that one. And that's like quite literally like picking someone up and like swinging them and throwing them, right? But
yeah.
I mean,
that would have been hilarious.
Yeah, like with the kobolds especially.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about trying to like grapple and like choke one of the worms or whatever. Like,
oh wow.
So yeah, so like the luchador is fun just because it's silly, right? Like it's ridiculous, and like that's why it's in the book, because it's fun to create, right?
But maybe some of the most clutch moments were because that luchador was on site.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
like
yeah, I mean like it's silly, it's ridiculous, it's a I mean, I'm sure people would say it's like a joke character, right? Like it's whatever, but it's fun and like it's
play serious. That's
right.
Fine.
But like it's not like weak. It's like, I mean, you're not a hindrance to the group for playing it, right?
Yes.
No.
I think that's.
We didn't flavor the luchador to be a luchador as a joke. It was very much a what's the class fantasy. I would love to actually be a luchador, and I like just straight give me Skyrim luchador and I'm 100% immersed. It wasn't meant to be a joke. It was like, this is a cool fantasy that I would love to have lived out.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good point. Is that it's a joke character that does not function. Like, it doesn't like draw away from the overall efficacy of the party, right? Like It doesn't make it so everyone's like, oh, we gotta drag this dude around,
right? Because it's not like it's not like a strength-based wizard or whatever, right? Like, you're not. It's a joke character that's not intentionally gimping yourself for the bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that sort of thing. Or playing like something super weird that is like multi-attribute dependent, like a monk, monk cleric or something. So you need like wisdom and dex and
something else,
like con, and it's like, okay, this doesn't work very well. Yeah.
No, it works, and that's what I like. I think it worked really, really well. I think it worked really, really well, and I think when you have a joke character that people are like, hey, but we're going down into the Sunbore. Bring the luchador,
right?
Like,
yeah.
Bring that one.
But of course, it's always like, it's also like the personality and stuff that you give to the character and how like seriously you play them, right? Because I mean, I don't think this would have been nearly as fun for me if I was playing a character that was like a luchador class, but had a super edgy backstory. And
dude, you don't want to play as the villain, the wrestling WWE villain on scene.
Reconciling.
But so I think as far as like favorite, I mean, yeah, I think that was probably it for me. Was the spider probably. As far as like what I want to see more of, I wasn't sure if you were talking about specifically from this module or just in general for like D&D, but it sounded like most of the other people were talking about in general. So again, I think if you look through the book, especially at like the monster section, you'll kind of see what I'm about to say, and it's I want. How do I say this? What I want more of are kind of like weird gimmick encounters that are memorable, right? Because like you know, I've played enough where regular fights aren't memorable anymore, right? It has to be something really unique, right? So the 40 centipede or you know, so like so stuff in the book, right, is kind of all based around that. Like there's nothing in that book that is just like kind of a normal monster other than the prestige class examples.
And even like, those, because they have the prestige classes, are unique. Like this monster was pulled directly, the wizard was pulled directly from there, and she was like, I've never fought a wizard who had reverse gravity on their spell list, and I was just like, yeah, that's a great spell. Like, yes.
Yeah, because the example monster, for like the example prestige class monsters, they are a range of classes. Because I think like if you look at the monster hunter, they're like level 6 or something. So it's like CR 3 or 4. So it like the example character is for a lower level group. But I think that wizard was like 13 or something like that. Like the wizard was the high one. Because I wanted the wizard to have the blood garden ability, right? Because it's such a pivotal thing for them, and it's so strong that you want your villain to have it. So I wanted I wanted like the stat block to have it. So I was like, all right, well, so it was like, okay, well, if she has to be 14th level to get this, well, it's gonna be a 14th level wizard, so got to fill out all the other parts of it.
I think you said gimmicky monsters.
Yeah,
and I like I understand what you mean, but I think gimmicky sometimes has a bad connotation. It is more like you want a lot of DMs, and myself included, I like making encounters interesting and unique because of the story that's around the encounter, right? And at this point as a DM, that's easy to do, right? I'm pulling because there's this macro arc that I'm building anyway, and I'm reaching into character backstories, making this encounter's story weight powerful. But making the encounter interesting because the encounter itself is different is not common, and that's the thing that I did like about the monsters in the book, right? Like the fact that how Zach was saying earlier, the half the fight is on this floor and half of it's on the ceiling, right? Like, what do we even do now? Like, right? Like, this was a normal fight, and now the worms have spider climb, and the spider has spider climb. So now we're in trouble wherever we are because they're and like that kind of change to how the fight feels is what adds additional and the fact that it had a story, it empowered the story even more, right? Because that side of it was there in the fight. So I don't know. I understand what you mean. Like it's gimmicky in that it's not standard, right? It's not just we're gonna go fight these dudes in a room, and it's perfect for boss fights too. Like,
and that's And that's kind of the other thing is these two can tell you it's like when I run games, it's like I typically don't run a lot of non-boss fights. Like if you have a combat, if you guys do a combat, you're gonna be at full resources, but it's gonna be 3 times the deadly limit, right? It's
gonna be terrible. Yeah.
What I always say is fighting 4 goblins 10 times as you go through a camp is not exciting, but walking into an auditorium with 40 goblins that you have to fight all at the same time is, right? Because then that lets the wizard player go, okay, well, here's maximum benefit of my fireball, and I killed 20 of them in one spell. It's the wizard killing 3 goblins with a fireball, that's not memorable, but it's let me tell you about the time that I wiped out an entire family
of goblins in one go.
Yeah, half one the turn. Tribe burned in my hands.
Right. So like when I talk about like gimmick monsters in the book, I'm talking about like the suffocator, right?
Mm-hmm.
That one is like super duper weird because and like it was on purpose, right? Because I was trying to. I think what I was doing is I was looking through like the handbook or whatever about like weird rules that don't ever get used, and I found like the suffocation and drowning rules and like how they work,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, it'd be it'd be
It'd
fun.
be terrible.
Uh,
you know what would suck
Terrible
for my
and fun.
players?
a monster that doesn't do any damage, but it just tries to suffocate, like drown you, because if you basically, it's like drowning is you get con +1 minutes of air, and then if you hit that time limit, you have like con numbers of rounds to get air, or you drop to 0, like instantly. You're dying,
Yeah.
right? So the entire point of that monster is, it latches onto your face, and then of course, like since drowning takes minutes, which is 60 rounds of combat, it's like once it's grappled onto you, it can then like every turn that someone hasn't ripped it off of you or killed it, it like compresses like a anaconda, and it starts like every time it like hits you again with that that crunch, you lose like a minute or a round of air, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
then
terrible.
and then because I hate my players, I also gave it damage transference. So half the damage you do to it while it's grappling goes to the person it's grappling.
It's terrible. I was gonna make one out of blood, but I decided against it. Anyway, you all, I thank you all very much for just kind of being a part of this. We could talk for a long time, but I know we're everybody got to go to bed and live tomorrow. But I will say just thank you very much again for Forever DM for giving us the material to work with. It was really fun to build it up, and thank you, Kevin, as well for co-writing and helping. But I really enjoy it. If you have a chance, give it a chance. Just pick it up, try it, use it. As a DM, I would say when you're balancing encounters with it, make sure the prestige classes are as though you've given them a +2 weapon, and just keep that in mind when you're doing it. Like everyone who has a prestige class, treat it like they have a +2 magical weapon, and it usually ends up being around the same. At higher levels, it's more like a +3 or like a Holy Avenger or something like that. Because, and you don't have to give all the features of the prestige class out when you are running this for a campaign. You can say like, hey, you talked to X monk and got this ability from the blood mage. You talked to Y soldier and got this ability from anti-mage, right? And you can pepper them in as you see fit, as though it is a magic item that is unlocking different abilities over time, right? You can have it follow the level cap immediately, or you can ration it out depending on your story. So that's the only way, because I know that's, if you're looking at if you pull up the document, you're probably going to think, how do I balance this? Holy crap. And that's kind of how you do it. So.
I think there was one thing, and you can clip this and put it at the beginning maybe, but it's like, I named it the GM's Box of Duct Tape because the entire point is I have this hole in my game, I have a problem. Let's go fish around in the toolbox and pull out the duct tape because we need to fix something, right? So it's like patches almost, right? It's like little fixes that you can slap on the game, right? That was kind of the entire premise, I guess, right?
And I think we won't cut it. I think we'll keep it right there because that is a fitting way to end. Thank you all very much. Please pick up the supplement. It's fantastic. And just pull out some duct tape, slap it on your adventures, and just add some depth, uniqueness, and creativity to your games and campaigns. And we wish you the best in your adventures. You take care.